In 2018, one of the most notable international sports controversies sprung about involving Australia's international cricket team. At the center of the scandal were three men: Steve Smith, Dave Warner, and Cameron Bancroft. The story began in March of that year, as the Australian team had its share of conflict throughout the Cape Town Test. First, Warner was involved in a confrontation with a player of the South African Proteas team, in which said players made remarks of Warner's wife, causing Warner to have been held calm by Smith and other teammates. This, along with a small spat where Smith got into it with another opposing player, set the tone for the event for the Australian team. These instances, though notable, paled in comparison to what occurred on March 24th, 2018. On this day, whilst preparing for a match, Bancroft was caught rubbing a small yellow object on the ball. When Bancroft came forward to admit to his tampering of the ball, he claimed that it was just sticky tape. However, it was later revealed that he had scraped the ball with sandpaper to roughen it up. It was also made known later that Smith, the team's captain, had known of Bancroft's plan to tamper with the ball. Furthermore, Warner, who was the team's vice captain, was found to be the one responsible for coming up with the plan to tamper with the ball. All in all, the scandal was a very, very big deal, but the fallout had arguably an even larger impact. Cricket Australia performed the investigations, which led to the exposure of each man's contributions to the scandal. What came next was the punishment. Warner, the architect of the plan, would receive the heftiest punishment, being given a 12-month ban, along with a permanent prohibition from leadership positions in the future. Smith and Bancroft received a punishment equal to each other, as they were banned from cricket play for 12 months as well, but instead of being permanently banned from leadership positions, each of them were just prohibited from leadership for 1 year further than the original ban. The issue that fans had with the fallout of this scandal was precedent. This is where the Australian Cricketers Association came into play. They challenged the rulings made by the Cricket Australia on the grounds that they were completely unprecedented when compared to previous sanctions handed down by the International Cricket Council. Greg Dyer of the ACA, when challenging the rulings, brought up the previous instances of smaller scandals and how, of the dozens or so matters of this type, the most severe suspensions to date have been a ban for 2 one-day invitationals. So it's evident that this situation has created a massive stir in the world of cricket, not only in Australia, but throughout the world. And I'm approaching both the Australian Cricketers Association and Cricket Australia, and I'm going to try to mediate the difference in opinion on how the punishment shall be handled. I believe it's extremely important that we first and foremost set a precedent. We mustn't let this slip by without showing the proper initiative, as it is majorly important to save our sport. It is clear that the punishment is very disproportionate when compared to previous similar matters, so I propose that we create a very specific set of standards that clearly states the punishment for the times in which the game has been brought to disrepute, and we must stick to these standards. Setting precedent is never easy, and that is the hill we must climb, but it is necessary that we work together to ensure that the situations like this do not run rampant in our sport, and that there is a proper and consistent punishment set forth for any future conflicts. Since it's apparent that this punishment may be too harsh, yet it is also true that we must create a strong enough message to set some precedent with this punishment. It is important that we take an integrative approach into our conflict resolution. I propose that none of the players shall be banned from leadership positions any further past their original bans. I also say that the original bans are far too long. There is no precedent to go from multiple one-day bans to a full year's worth of bans. So I propose that Warner, the architect of the scandal, shall be given the heftiest punishment, and it should still be considerable. So I say Warner should be handed somewhere around an 8-month ban, so that it is still lower than the initial ban as to appeal to the ACA's initial concerns, while remaining significant so that we can send a message to our sport that these types of behaviors will no longer be tolerated. And as far as Bancroft and Smith, I say that they should have a slightly lower punishment of 6 months. Still significant, but also still lower than the initial punishment. Lastly, this is the standard. We are setting a standard. Bringing disrepute to our sport will subject any wrongdoer to a hefty ban, and we must follow this precedent from now on to keep the integrity of this sport.